Hello students, in previous lecture we have studied about the crystalline substances, that is the types of different crystalline substances, molecular crystals, ionic crystals as well as metallic crystals and covalent or network crystals, and the properties of those crystalline substances we have discussed in the previous lecture. Then see here, all of you studied about that the basic constituent of any crystal, that is it may be atoms or ions or it may be molecules, and ions that are cations or anions or both charged particles or ions. Then for atoms, molecules or those ions, we have to use the word particles. That means particles are nothing but those are atoms or molecules or cation or anion or cation and anion both. That means here, according to the basic constituent present in the crystal structure, there are 4 types. All of you have studied about that in previous lecture. Then in this lecture we are going to study about the crystal structures, that is the arrangement of those particles or atoms, molecules or charged ions present in the crystal structure. How those particles are arranged in the crystalline substances. See here, all of you have studied about that crystalline substances are those substances in which there is a particular arrangement of the particles that is regular. That means there is a orderness in the arrangement of those particles in the crystal structures. Then these crystal structures, which are described on the basis of 2 terms, that is those crystal structures are described by the 2 concepts, or it is depends upon 2 concepts, that is lattice and basis. See here in the diagram or in this figure, observe that here the crystal structure is obtained by, that is the combination of lattice points and bases. Then what is lattice? The lattice which is shown by, that is small dots, and that lattice means there are the particular position of the particles present at that point in the crystal structures, and there are 2 more dots or spheres are there, which is known as bases, and there are different types of those spheres are there. Those are nothing but those are the particles which is present in the crystal structure. And when those particles, that is basis means the particles, different types of particles which is arranged at the point of that lattice point, and the 3D arrangement, 3D that means 3-dimensional arrangement of those particles takes place at the lattice point, and here 3-dimensional structure of that crystalline substances are obtained. That means lattice is the arrangement of those points, that is, see here, lattice is nothing but it is a arrangement arrangement of those particles at points, and those arrangements of particles at lattice point, it is on the three axes, on x, y and z axis. Therefore, the structure which is obtained, that is three-dimensional structure of or arrangement of those particles are nothing but that is the lattice. Then one more point, that is crystal structure. Then see here, for example, see here, if there is a crystal structure of, that is NaCl is taken, crystal structure of NaCl, then NaCl, the basic constituent of sodium chloride, that is common salt, is Na plus, that is cation, and Cl minus also, that is anions. Both charged particles, that is cation and anions, are present in the crystal structure of three-dimensional structure of NaCl lattice. Then NaCl lattice is of cubic type. Cubic, all of you have studied about that. Cubes, that means see here, it is those ions, cation and anions of NaCl, those are arranged at the lattice point of, that is cube. That means when these Na plus and Cl minus are arranged, then they stacked over to each other. Layers of those particles are stacked over to each other and to form a cubic structure. Then that cubic structure is obtained by joining the centers of those particles which are arranged in the crystal structure, and that is the type of that crystalline structure. And see here, there are total 8 particles are there, that is 8 ions are there, and those when arranged at 8 corner of, total there are 8 corners of that cube, and here the structure which is obtained is of unit cell or crystal structure or lattice structure of NaCl, that is common salt, that is sodium chloride. Here Na plus ion and Cl minus ions which are arranged alternately at the corner of cubic lattice structure, and here the structure of unit cell of that NaCl is obtained. That means see here, these crystal structures which are obtained by joining lattice points, see here, those are the lattice points at which those basic constituents are arranged. Then crystal structure which is obtained by joining lattice points, and crystal lattice is also known as space lattice. See here, crystal lattice is also known as space lattice. Space lattice. Then what is crystal lattice? Crystal lattice is nothing but it is a arrangement of the basic constituent, that is basic constituent of that crystal is unit cell. Then unit cell, see here, it is a unit cell of NaCl crystal, and this unit cell, it repeated again and again, and they can stacked over to each other. The layers of those repeating pattern of unit cell, those are stacked over to each other, and that space lattice which is obtained, it is built up of 3D basic structure, 3D dimensional basic pattern which forms the space lattice or crystal lattice. And this basic repeating pattern which is repeated in the entire crystal, that means this type of cubic structure is arranged in overall in the crystal lattice. Suppose we have taken 1 gram crystal of NaCl. That 1 gram crystal of NaCl, it consists of many unit cells which are arranged repeatedly and forms the layers, as well as those layers are stacked over to each other, above to each other, and forms the crystal structure. That means that crystal structure is known as space lattice, or it is also known as Bravais lattice. Then see here, those are the few diagrams of those space lattice, in which space lattice of crystals is of different types. Few of them are, that is simple cubic unit cell, or body centered unit cell, or face centered unit cell, or base centered unit cell, and those unit cell repeated in the crystal structure. Then see here, what is unit cell? It is the smallest repeating structure, smallest unit of that crystal. That means crystal is made up of lot of many unit cells, and unit cell is the smallest. See here, it is a cube, only one cube is there, in which 8 basic particles are there. That means here 8 ions which can forms 1 unit cell of NaCl. Similarly, different types of unit cells are made up of from different number of that particles. Then here 8 particles can make 1 unit cell of NaCl, and this unit cell repeated again and again in the crystal structure. Therefore, what is unit cell? Unit cell is the smallest repeating structural unit of crystalline solids. Those unit cells stacked together in the entire crystal, and crystals are made up of different shapes. For example, here NaCl unit cell is cubic in shape, or there may be hexagonal shaped unit cells are obtained, or orthorhombic, tetragonal, or monoclinic type of different types of unit cells are obtained here. We will discussing about those all types of unit cell later, and those unit cells can be classified into different types depending upon the position of those particles in the unit cell. Then see here position of those particles is at every corner, at 8 corner of that cubic structure. Therefore, it is known as simple cubic structure. That means here there are different types of unit cells which is depends upon, generally it is of 4 types of unit cells, which is based on the position of, that is position of particles present in the unit cell. Then see here, first that is primitive. Primitive, that means basic, which is also known as simple. Simple unit cell. When there is simple unit cell, then there are, for example, see here, in cubic unit cell, in the simple type of cubic unit cell, then those particles, basic constituents, it may be atom, molecule or ions, which are present at 8 corner of that unit cell. That means these are, those basic particles are only present at lattice point. Lattice point, that means those corners of the unit cells are known as lattice points. And basic particles are present at only the lattice points. Then that is the simple type of unit cell. Then second one, that is body centered. Body centered unit cell. Body centered unit cell, in which, see here, particles, that is basic constituents, these are present at every corner of that unit cell, as well as one more particle is present at the body centered. The name itself indicates that one more particle is present at inside the body, that is middle of the that cube inside the body. See here in the figure, you have observed that there are total 8 particles present at each 8 corners of unit cell, as well as one more extra particle is present inside the middle of the center of the that unit cell. That is called as body centered unit cell. Then third one, that is face centered. Face centered unit cell. Then face centered unit cell, which is also known as FCC, and body centered unit cell is known as BCC. Then and simple unit cell is known as SCC. Then face centered unit cell, see here, the name itself indicates that there are total 8 particles or basic particles are present at the corner, that is lattice point, as well as extra particles, basic particles are present at the center of each face of that unit cell. See here in the figure, in the face centered, that is FCC unit cell, there are particles, basic particles present at every corner of that unit cell, as well as there are few more particles which is present at center of the each face of that unit cell. Therefore, these are called as face centered unit cell. One more, that is last one, that is base centered. Base centered. Base centered unit cell. Base centered unit cell means, for example, see here, suppose there is a unit cell in which all A corners of that unit cell, which is occupied by the basic constituents, that means there are particles, basic particles present at each corner of that unit cell, as well as, see here, base centered means only 2 particles are present, which is at center of upper face as well as center of base. That means those are present on only 2 centers of 2 faces, along with the particles present at each corner of that unit cell. Then see here in this diagram, you observe the figures given in the diagram and then classify those unit cells into simple or primitive type of unit cell, face centered unit cell, or body centered unit cell, or base centered unit cells. Then see here, we will discussing about the detail about the crystal structures.
Thank you.